fantastic turnout this evening. We are so thrilled to have you all here this evening. I'm Ken Reel. I run the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce. This is a new forum. This is a new forum for us. This is a new forum for Cape Ann and certainly for Gloucester. The idea tonight is to create a sustainable forum, a meetup, if you will, as is going on in lots and lots of other places around the country, here in Gloucester, here in Cape Ann, to get our innovators and our entrepreneurs and our makers and our artists of all types together, to meet each other, to network, and to collaborate. And it's so fantastic to see you all here this evening. We have such a wide group of people here. We have our PhDs, represented certainly by our panelists, and we're so thrilled that you're here this evening. Thank you. We're going to introduce you shortly. We have Gordon College here, which is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. We don't have Endicott College here. I'm not exactly sure why, Justin. You're going to have to... okay, good. We have a... okay, good. Good. We're thrilled to have the college students here. That's really fantastic. We have artists here. We have scientists here. We have engineers here. We have businesses from all types. And that's what we love, and we're really hoping to get from this forum is a true cross-section of businesses and science and engineering and young people to get together and meet each other and collaborate and talk about what can we do here in Gloucester and Cape Ann to take this region to another level. And we're really excited about the topic this evening, and that, of course, is biotech. And this is going to be biotech light, because these folks here are going to lose me if we go very deep at all. So they've been advised multiple times that we're going to keep this at a high level. And then we're going to open it up to you all for conversation. We want this to be casual. We want this to be a discussion. We'll go about an hour. The panelists have about 10 minutes each. And then we can go about an hour. And we want this to work for you all, because the idea here is this is not a one-off. This is something that we're going to do consistently. Our next session is already planned, featuring Katie Call, our science director at the Marine Station at Ansquam. And that's going to be on coastal resiliency. Coastal resiliency is a hot topic, as you all may have personally experienced with the recent flooding. And so that's going to be a really exciting event as well. It's going to be right here again. So get to know this space, get to know the people around you, and you're going to get to meet a lot of other people like us who want to bring change to this region in a new and different way. And so we're very excited about this Coastal Resiliency Talk. It's going to be on June 21st, and we're already looking at our third talk of the year, and that's going to be in September, and it'll probably be something on the blue economy and the wonderful work that Dr. Ian Kerr is doing at Ocean Alliance, and other panelists that we'll bring in to talk about that. And next year, we do it all over again. So this is not a one-off. We want to see you back here. We want this forum to grow and talk about how do we take this region to another level. So that's the introduction. Welcome to the Cape Ann Innovators Collaborative, or CAKE. You are officially the cake eaters. We have the cake bakers, and I'd like to just quickly just recognize our bakers here for a moment, and Ed Britsky, who's going to be our MC for this evening. We've been working on this forum for about 3 months, meeting almost every week to figure out how do we do this? How do we figure out what are these worthwhile topics that's going to bring this kind of community together, and how do we sustain it? And so Ed is certainly core in that. Tom Chamora is somewhere in the room. Bibi Nelson is in the room. Bo Abrams was in the room, but she may have had to leave. Who else do we have? Christine Armstrong in the back there. We literally have had about 8 people, and we are always looking for other people to help us grow this forum. We have our next meeting actually next week. If you're interested in helping us to grow this forum, we would love to have your input, because we need more people around our table to make sure that this thing is sustainable. And that's what's so exciting. There really are some exciting things that are going on, some of which we're not even going to talk about tonight, but you'll see very soon in the newspaper. So stay tuned for that. So that's my introduction. With that, I would like to introduce our MC for the evening, and that's Ed Britsky. Ed is the founder and president of Blue Cord Management, and it's a leadership consulting firm. And Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Nice. Thank you so much, Ken, and thank all of you for coming out today. Ken is not exaggerating that in the last three months we've been meeting almost weekly to put this together, but it's been something that him, I, Tom Shimura, Tom Gillette have been talking about for the better part of close to 2 years now, and just putting events like this together and bring the ideas of innovation into Cape Ann. And it's not innovation as a disruptor, but it's innovation as an adder. This area has such a rich heritage and such a rich history. We've been innovating here as a seaport since the 1620s. And now as new technologies are coming about, how do they affect our landscape here? How will they change what we have? And we have such a great panel today that's going to show us, at least on the biotechnology side, what's being added in, what new ideas are coming in, what new opportunities do we have here on Cape Ann. So I'd like to start with introducing Andrea. She has a PhD in biochemistry from McMaster University in Canada, has held science positions at the National University of Singapore, Department of Cell Biology and Pharmacology at Geron Corporation, and the Oncology Department at Hoffman La Roche, where her research interests were focused on questions related to human aging and cancer cell biology. In 2003, she joined the faculty at Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences and focused her research to study long-lived marine invertebrates with an effort to understand how these animals live such long and healthy lives in the absence of cancer. With this background at the intersection of marine biology and human health, Andrea recently joined the GMGI, the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, as their Director of Science. So thank you so much, Andrea, for joining us today. Sitting next to her, we have Martha Farmer. She's the founder and CEO of North Shore Innoventures, a nonprofit technology incubator in Beverly, fostering life sciences and clean tech startups. And last I heard, you guys were filled to capacity, right?
No, we just expanded.
Oh, excellent, even better. She's very active in the North Shore community, serving on the ethics committee for Beverly and Addison Gilbert Hospital, the board of advisors for Endicott College, and the board of directors for the North Shore Technology Council, among many others. For her work to promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic development on the North Shore, Endicott conferred on her an honorary degree, and the North Shore Chamber of Commerce honored her in 2016 as a North Shore Distinguished Leader. For much of her career, she was with Baxter Healthcare in Chicago in management of R&D, clinical development, and biological therapies, before moving to Boston, where she co-founded a startup in 1998. She's been working with startups ever since. Martha earned a BS in zoology and a PhD in physiology and pharmacology from Duke, did postdoctoral training at Johns Hopkins, and was a medical ethics fellow at Harvard. She's an author on more than 30 publications and holds 3 patents. Thank you so much, Martha, for joining us. Justin received his BSc in biomedical engineering from the University of Iowa and his PhD in biological chemistry from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. He pursued postdoctoral studies in departments of molecular genetics and biochemistry at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, prior to being hired as a faculty member in the Department of Biology at North Park University. He's currently the professor of biology and bioengineering and assistant dean of science, technology, and mathematics at Endicott College. Dr. Top's research projects are incredibly diverse, very impressive, but have covered a multitude of biomedical applications. All of his research has involved his undergraduates, many of whom have co-authored his national meeting abstracts and articles. Dr. Top has helped found and fund the formation of the Life Sciences Consortium of the North Shore. The consortium was formed to promote a formal partnership between 4 colleges, a nonprofit incubator, and local industry to enhance the life sciences workforce through the purchase of advanced instrumentation, strategic partnerships, and the reimagining of curriculum. He's strongly committed to the success of startups here on the North Shore, and through his work with companies in the Endicott STEM Indicator and business development activities with North Shore Innovator. So thank you so much, Justin, for joining us. So we have an absolute amazing array of people here. I'm very excited to have them come speak. And Justin, we'd love to start off with you today.
See where I should stand. So I'm very informal. I'm a teacher. I always stand and use my hands in front of students, so I'm going to do that. I'll just give you kind of an overview of where we're going. I was told in 10 minutes to talk about the state of biotechnology within the nation and then the region. So I'm going to fail at that, and I'm probably going to fail at 10 minutes. And then Marty's going to talk about more locally within the region and what North Shore Interventures is doing. And then Andrea's going to even zoom in more to Gloucester and what GMGI is doing. So you can advance to the next slides. One more. So there's really, I teach, right? I teach undergraduates, and I constantly tell them there's really never been a better time to be a life scientist. I mean, the skills and the techniques that have been established and sort of the impact on human health is just extraordinary. You probably have all heard of CAR T cell therapy. You don't need to know how it works, but it provides a potential cure for cancer, right? And this is a level of like antibiotics, when antibiotics were discovered and can cure bacterial infections, right? Curing of cancer. And there's been a lot of CAR T sort of activity going on after that. You can go to the next one. Dave Mooney, a professor at Harvard, he gave a talk at Endicott a couple weeks ago. He just had some IP license with Novartis in which he's developing biomaterials that can be implanted that can then be used to develop natural vaccines within your body, right? Stem cell therapy. I work on ALS in part. Ed mentioned I have a lot of interests. I'm schizophrenic. That's really why. I just like doing a lot of different things. But ALS is one of the diseases I work on, and a stem cell trial for that. Keep going. AI, machine learning, right? They're coming out of the big tech. We can actually use that to apply that to human data. So whether it's Alzheimer's, detecting that before patients can or before families can, or if it's identifying new tests. And then lab-grown meat. This is a really hot area. It's really expensive. I think it's down to $50 a pound. So it's not, financially it's not there yet, but it is hopefully a sustainable way to eat meat in the future. Next slide. So I thought I would just highlight sort of where we're headed in biotechnology. There's a lot of sort of traditional biochemistry that's still going on in drug development. But these are sort of the areas that are the newest, I would say, and the most up and coming. Gene therapy, so I talked a little bit about CAR T. CRISPR-Cas9 is also in preclinical development. That is a mechanism by which we can replace gene deficits within the body, and there's multiple companies, most of them in the Boston, Cambridge area. Genomics, there will be a time when you will have your genome sequenced. We all will at some point, most likely. Hopefully we'll also do other omics because there's proteomics, metabolomics, other things that can help us understand human health. Personalized medicine. With your particular genome sequence, is this drug going to work or this drug? That's in the way. Stem cells. Stem cells is a really, really hot area for a variety of diseases. Targeted drug delivery. We were talking about this in biochemistry the other day in my lecture. We had, chemotherapy, cancer therapeutics can have a lot of side effects, right? Well, what if we can take a therapy that orally would have normally some bad side effect and take it so it just goes to the tumor? That's in development. Sensors and diagnostics. Home diagnostics is a hot area, right? There are blood cell counters for people that are getting chemotherapy where you can actually prick your finger at home and they will do a blood cell count for you right there, right? There is a breath test that you can use to monitor your asthma symptoms, right? Home diagnostics. Synthetic biology, whether for agricultural uses or for new fuels, et cetera, where we can recreate the genome of organisms and control them. I mentioned machine learning and AI in drug development already, but that's a hot area. And then one I don't recommend, but is actually occurring, is biohacking, right? This hacking sort of makerspace culture, DIY yourself. Well, people are injecting DNA into themselves. I don't know where Dakota is, but he said a friend of his did that the other day. And then with that, with all of these great sort of research areas, drug development projects that are going on, there's a whole system of companies that are needed to supply reagents and supplies to those scientists. So Andy Gardner from NEB is here. Cell Signaling Technology is right down the road as well. That are supplying reagents, things that scientists need to do these experiments. Go on. So that's just a real quick overview. I mean, the snapshots I showed on the previous slide with the headlines, those were all from like the last week. I mean, it's such a great time to be a life scientist. So I wanted to have some sort of visual to show where the life sciences industry is in the US. And this is probably not the best map, but it's a map from 2012, so it's a little old, based upon LinkedIn profiles. So what is your job title? What area are you in? All right. And you can see some of the familiar circles are there. And this is broken down into 3 sort of life science categories: biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and med devices. All right. And this is based upon LinkedIn data. And there may be a few cities you didn't, like Indianapolis. Indianapolis is, I'm a Midwest guy, so born and raised in Iowa. And so I like to point out when the Midwest does things, because we seem to be ignored. But Indianapolis, which has a bigger population than Boston, also is also a pretty big pharma. Eli Lilly is there, right? And so it's not just the places you normally think of. There is life sciences going on all across the nation. However, next slide. These are really where the top 8 places are for biopharma. This is biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. The top 3 in that order are not arguable. Depending upon whatever metric you use, you're going to put Boston, Cambridge, the Bay Area of California, and New York, New Jersey in the top 3. The other 5 change places depending upon the year. And these are hubs that have grown around biotechnology. I think the next slide, I've got a few reasons why. So there's been a lot of studying, like how can we become the new Silicon Valley, right? Iowa wants to be Silicon Prairie. Right? All these places want to be, how can we recreate Boston and Cambridge, right? How do we do that? And it's hard, right? But the characteristics of these hubs, first are you have smart people, right, that know the moon is bigger than an elephant. And usually those people are around universities, right? Colleges and universities. So smart people that are congregating around universities, that's sort of an essential. These are things that are necessary for a hub to grow. I'll mention that they're not sufficient though. The next thing is you need intellectual property. You need scientists and engineers that are coming up with patentable things that companies can form around. The next thing is you need lab space. That's a beautiful Endicott lab where you can come and tour anytime you want. You need lab space to be able to do this, right? Kendall Square, I mean, I hate driving to Kendall Square. We've talked about branding the North Shore as you don't have to be in Kendall Square almost, right? Like it's just, every time I drive down, it's worse. And where are they going to build? There's no more space, right? So lab space come out in the North Shore. Next thing. You also need money, right? Whether that's grant funding, NIH, NSF, VC funding, Third Rock Ventures, one of the largest life sciences VCs, or a wonderful initiative from the state of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. I don't know how many of you know about this, but this is, Deval Patrick created this. It was a $1 billion initiative, probably 11 or 12 years ago now. I think it's, this is, yeah, 10. And I was on the phone, I finished my PhD at the Mayo Clinic actually in Rochester, Minnesota, so world famous Mayo Clinic. They want to start all these companies, but there's no lab space. There's space everywhere, right? It's Rochester, Minnesota, right? There's space everywhere, right? And yet no one wants to pay to build these incubator labs. Mass Life Sciences Center helped build NSIVs, helped build Lab Centrals, and others. So you need that money as well. So you can go to the next slide. The problem is it's hard to get all of that at the same time and all of that together, but all of that is necessary but not sufficient. There's a great book I read over Christmas break called The New Geography of Jobs. Why do people move to Silicon Valley where it's 1.2 million for a 3-bedroom, right? Well, because there's jobs there. Why do people set up jobs there? It's because there's people there. It's this positive feedback loop, right? It's really hard to recreate this. Go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, Boston, Cambridge, that area is really considered the #1 place for biopharma in the world. We're talking nation in the world. This is a figure that I pulled from J&J Innovation Labs, and it just gives it helps to supply reasons for why everything is clustered there, right? You've got hospitals, you've got doctors, you've got patients, you've got venture capital, some of the best universities in the world, right? You've got pharma and biotech companies with lab space, jobs, and their own venture capital funds, right? So it's this, again, this sort of positive thing that's going on there. Now this is a horrible map. It doesn't show, it shows like a third maybe of what's going on in there, but I think it proves the point. Now, as I mentioned, there's only so much space in Kendall Square though. Every time I go, there's more construction. And so when we say Boston, Cambridge, we really probably mean the state of Massachusetts, all right? There's only so much space, and it's actually expanding out. So you can't see that font, that's okay. The point of the slide was that there is biotech going on outside of Boston and Cambridge. Obviously, we have it represented up here, but other parts of the state are seeing this growth as well. And in fact, the North Shore has the third largest share of life sciences in the state. You can go to the next thing. So this is by, I think this was by jobs. They pulled this from Mass Bio. They do this annual report. And you can see these are the different regions and the number of jobs in life sciences and the share. So you can see that Boston, Cambridge is still about 60%. But the North Shore is third at 11% behind Metro West and Boston, Cambridge, but it's the fastest growing region, all right? And that does not escape the eyes of the people that created this, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity on the North Shore. As I mentioned, this square mile, right here is only so big, right? And it needs to go out. Now, do we have all of the necessary things that I mentioned to create a hub here? I think we do, but I think we need to organize them better. I think with that, I can turn it over to Marty perfectly.
Okay, thank you, Justin. I had forgotten that to be a teacher, you have to be sort of a stand-up comic. That was just fantastic.
I wasn't trying to be funny, sorry.
Oh, well. Okay, thank you. So let me have the next slide. Oops, we're missing a slide. Okay.
That's the first.
Okay, well, there was one that had a bunch of pictures of our new space. So I don't.
Go back.
Go back?
I've got pictures there.
Okay. All right. Anyhow, all right. We have, to give you an idea where I'm going to go with this is North Shore Innoventures. I won't go into a lot of the history, but a little bit about how we started and how we've come to be. I have to point out Lynn Sutherland is in the room, and she and I actually did work together to do the feasibility study on this thing back in 2008. So it's been a while coming along, and I know an awful lot of people in this room, so you've all sort of watched this history. Just a few months ago, we moved into new space after having grown from, I guess it was actually in 2011 that we opened up a lab at the Cummings Center, and we got a lab, we got a little bit of grant money. We started in 2008, remember that year? Lousy year to start anything. Really bad, no money. And eventually we did get a grant. We got one from the ARRA. Remember that? The America Recovery Act from the recession. And we got $211,000, which was enough to actually get us going. We started off initially, early on in Lynn, in some space that somebody gave us, and then we managed to get a lab at Cummings Center. And we subleased a lab that had equipment in it in 2011, and a lab with equipment was a magnet, and companies came to us. Prior to that, we knew that we had some skills that we could help companies, but they needed lab space and they needed equipment, and that's when it took off. So since that time, we've had 42 companies, 20 have graduated, 22 are currently in the program, and collectively they have raised, as of last month, $250 million. And almost all of that has been deployed here in the North Shore region. They employ 286 people. We've had 177 paid internships offered by those companies in the program, 215 patents filed. I mean, those are great statistics, aren't they? So I'm very proud of that. Can you tell? But this past summer, we had been at a point where we were scattered all up one side and down the other of the Cummings Center. And if any of you know the Cummings Center, that's a big space. So we managed to consolidate into 13,000 square feet of new space with new labs, and that just happened last June. And it's just wonderful because we have conference rooms. The North Shore Tech Council uses our conference rooms. Lots of places use our conference rooms now. We have space for people to have lunch together. We had 20 people together eating lunch today. That collaborative environment has just been terrific, and we're so pleased to be able to do that now. So I mentioned the space. We have a maker space, which is just really cool tools. And probably the most important thing we do is the kind of support that we offer these companies as they grow. I mentioned most of those. Let me go to the next one. So this is the coaching approach we take. I'm not going to go into the science at all. There's a phenomenal science. I do recommend you go to the website and have a look, because if you look at the companies that are there, and there's just a little bit about each one, some of them are doing astonishing things. We have one company, they just got funded today, that is doing an implantable artificial kidney. It will actually be grown from the stem cells of the patient that needs it. And instead of having to wait for somebody to die so that you get a kidney, or you sit on dialysis until you die, this will be an opportunity to actually have a kidney that is, I mean, this is still science fiction. We're 10 years out, but it's a terrific group. It's a surgeon from MGH who started this, and we have the head of the Harvard Stem Cell Institute, who's now president of the company, and they're working on the development of a dialysis graft, they're calling it, but it's an artificial kidney from the patient's own stem cells. That kind of thing is going on. It's incredibly exciting to me to be a part of that. I came out of the biotech industry. I worked for 15 years on the development of a hemoglobin-based oxygen carrier for emergency medicine, and it failed in a phase 3 clinical trial. And so I left that and went to work with startups. And now working with this, it's like I have 20, 30, 40 shots on goal here instead of just one. So anyway, we have an approach. We know that they know. These companies come to us. We're calling them companies. These are startups. 1, 2, 3 people. 3 people and a patent is a startup, right? And maybe not even a patent yet, an idea, maybe a filed patent. And they come in and we have them rate themselves on a spreadsheet. We're scientists, right? They have to do an Excel spreadsheet with about 35 questions. And from that, they figure out from the very beginning, the center, team development, 0. This is on a scale of 0 to 100, where you think you need to be when you graduate. And they're starting off as a team of 1. They don't have much of a team. They rarely have very much funding. Their technology advances the fastest. This is sort of every 4 months we do this analysis. And then market validation, go out and talk to customers. These are engineers. There's some great jokes about engineers. You know you have an extroverted engineer when they look at your shoes instead of their own. You heard that joke? So this is a group of people that you've got to get out there talking to customers. And it's wonderful. They get it, they start working on that. That's one of the things we have to really push them toward, because it doesn't come easy. You think you have a solution to a problem, and when you go out and talk to customers, you find out you probably didn't have it right, and you have to pivot. And that's what that process is all about. And then gradually getting funding, getting their operations in place, all of that. So that coaching paradigm is what we do. If left to their own devices, they would not do some of what you have to do if you're actually going to build a company. So that's our job. Next. So here's what I think is really important for the people in this room. This is what we think we can achieve. I told you some statistics that I'm proud of, but what we think we can achieve. Okay, 286 jobs created so far, but at the rate we've been creating them now, we're not, I mean, I'm not, it's the companies that we've been bringing in. I'm going to take credit for all of that. Oh boy. But we expect to be able to point to 1,400 jobs at least by 2026. That would be pretty cool, right? Right now, I told you 250 million has been raised. It's easy to imagine 850 million, and that, just on the rate at which it was happening. And given that that's accelerated lately, that's probably an underestimate. The internships with 177 so far will easily exceed 500. by that point. We make pretty sure these kids get paid when they are doing this internship as well. They can get that through the Mass Life Sciences Center, but if for some reason they don't qualify, we want them paid. And we've actually been recognized for the kind of work we're doing. You know, the governor has been particularly interested in seeing more happen outside of the Cambridge-Boston area, and so we're one of the examples they point to. Next slide. So here's a bit of context about the life sciences cluster that we have. This data is from about 2016 data, so it's fairly recent. And with 115 life sciences companies in the narrowly defined North Shore region. When Justin was showing you the data from Mass Bio, that actually was the whole of Northeast Massachusetts, or north of Boston, Massachusetts. This is a smaller area, but 115 companies, and 55 of them in Beverly. 50 of those are probably at the Cumming Center. So it's it's kind of amazing what that little cluster. When we first got there were only about 25. So it has been growing. I think we have actually been helpful in being sort of a nucleation zone for that. People recognize that it's there. Cumming Center now, they send us people. If you can imagine this, our landlord sends us people who might want to rent space. Hello? But they want to rent, 100 square feet. So we get people coming to us because of that. And now the next slide. Now this is an exciting slide. I guess I can point to this. Okay. The total of all industries, that top arrow on the left, in the North Shore area, that's not life sciences, it's everything. The average wage is about $1,000 a week. So your average is on the order of $50,000 or so a year. In the life sciences, that number is 2.5 times as high. And only a couple of years ago, it was only twice as high. It's been going up at an amazing rate. So the life sciences pays well, and which is a really good reason for GMGI getting their Biotech Academy kids educated. It is a really rapidly growing area. It's a hugely important area. It is the most exciting area that Boston, Cambridge, is known for, I think. So it's quite a remarkable place to do your economic development based on this kind of technology because of that number. So, $100,000 or more for your average salary is pretty amazing. So, the next slide. Okay, the Life Sciences Consortium. We started this, and Justin talked about this. We started this process when we applied for a grant in 2012 with 5 institutions at that time: Endicott, Gordon, Salem State, North Shore Community College, and us. And we didn't get it. And being the persistent scientists we are, by the way, a PhD is characterized by persistence. There's nothing. It takes that more than anything else. So we went back and we did it again, and we got it the second time. We got $5 million that got distributed among those 5 institutions and made a real difference in the quality of the labs, with the intention of giving these students a much better education on the state-of-the-art equipment, or at least the current utilitarian equipment that everybody used in the industry, so that they could come out of school well-equipped for a job in the biotech industry. And that has really occurred. There's a gazillion students that have gone through that. What's the number, Justin? How many students have it's 98 courses and thousands of students have had exposure to the use of this equipment to be trained on now. And as of just a few weeks ago, officially, GMGI is now part of our consortium. We've just applied for a small grant to the Essex County Community Foundation as a consortium, and we'll be doing more of that to sort of grow this collective effort. We all have this ideal of having a workforce that is well trained and excited about going to work in this industry. There's another element to it. There's not just this consortium. There's the North Shore Tech Council. Dave Bertoni is here. There's the North Shore Alliance for Economic Development, which is based out of the Enterprise Center at Salem State, and then there's the Enterprise Center as well. There's the North Shore WIB, the Workforce Investment Board. So we have a whole group of institutions that have come together as the coalition, North Shore Coalition for Tech Coalition of the North Shore, right? Too many acronyms. So because we all have that same mission of growing this kind of industry, the tech industry in this region, because of the good jobs it creates. So that's basically my part, and I'll turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you so much, Marty. Truly some amazing growth in the industry. Now, Andrea, to take it to a little bit more of a local level, what are we seeing here in town?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, but I thought I might start out by talking a little bit, or providing a little bit of background about a very particular sector of biotechnology, which is something that I think is ideally suited to a place that has almost 400 years of history of maritime history, heritage, and culture and commerce, and that is the field of marine biotechnology. So, and of course, marine biotechnology really just means deriving medicines, new products, new things from the sea, okay, from marine organisms. The marine environment is absolutely rich with biodiversity. It's estimated that there's more than 1 million different species of plants and animals in the ocean. And when you look at the microbial community, the bacteria, the fungi, it's perhaps as much as 100 million, and maybe even as high as 1 billion. We really don't know the complexity of what's out there. So what's really exciting about the marine environment is we really only know a fraction of what's out there. This is really the last frontier for new discovery. And so there's really some exciting things that we can still discover in the ocean. And so I put a few examples up here of just some of the success stories of things that have been derived from marine biotechnology. Pharmaceuticals up in the top corner. Right now there are 9 FDA-approved marine-derived drugs on the market. I put 2 examples up there. An anti-cancer drug called Yondelis. This is has a really unique chemical structure, really unique mechanism of action. We're finding really unique molecules in the marine environment, things we've never seen before, things that we just haven't discovered anything the likes of which in the terrestrial world. Prialt is a pain medication. It's derived from the venom of a cone snail. It's reported to be 1,000 times more potent than morphine at relieving pain. It's very specific, and most importantly, it's a non-addictive pain medication. So this is the kind of breakthrough that we can look forward to in looking for new sources of medications from the ocean. Up in the top corner, we have nutraceuticals. I think most people are familiar with some of the dietary supplements that come from the sea. The omega-3 fatty acids, of course, are really important for the health of our brain and our heart. Things like astaxanthin, which comes from marine microalgae, but also it's basically the red pigment in the lobster shell. It's a really potent antioxidant. It's used as a dietary supplement and can basically combat things like inflammation, and is also very good for your eye health and your heart health. In the bottom corner, we have the sea whip from the Caribbean. Produces this class of compounds that has natural anti-inflammatory properties. These are actually, some of them are in clinical trials for inflammatory disease, but Estee Lauder is actually including the extract from the sea whip in one of its face creams right now. So you can get Resilience face cream, which has some sea whip extract incorporated into it. We have industrial enzymes and enzymes for biotechnology from the sea. And when you think about it, things in different extreme environments in the sea are perfectly adapted to their environment. So on the one picture, I have a decomposing whale carcass at the bottom of the sea. The microbes that help to break down the fat and the proteins of that whale carcass are actually extremely good at breaking down fats and proteins in the gravy that you spilled on your shirt at Thanksgiving dinner. And it will do this at cold temperatures. And so it's a great additive for cold water tide for energy saving reasons. And the other end of the spectrum in the ocean, we have the deep sea hydrothermal vents, where organisms are very well adapted to living at extreme heat and pressure and pH. New England Biolabs has one of their enzymes comes from a bacteria from a deep sea hydrothermal vent that's bent polymerase. And over in the corner, there's a big effort to look for algal biofuels from marine algal sources. And so these are just a few examples of products that have come from marine sources. So the marine biotech environment is actually reported to be growing with a compound annual growth rate of more than 7% and a predicted value of $6.4 billion by 2025. So it's a growing industry, really something to look forward to in terms of the potential for this sector of biotechnology. So at the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, our mission is to conduct world-class marine biotechnology research that expands the regional economy. Now we're taking a very unique approach here. So traditionally, discovering things from the sea usually meant that you had to start with a lot of material. So for some of the compounds that made it their way to clinical trial, literally you needed thousands of pounds or tons of material. And so it was very difficult to develop products this way. It couldn't be done in a very sustainable fashion. You really were making an impact on the environment by taking so much biomass out of the ocean. But now with modern technologies like genomics, where we're just looking at the genetic sequence of organisms, it allows us to be able to explore the marine environment and all its potential by using very small amounts of material to start with. So we can do this in a very sustainable fashion. And with the price of sequencing, DNA sequencing, to look at the genetic information decreasing, it's now becoming very cost effective as well as sustainable. So we can take a small sample of any organism, we can sequence its genome, and you get a blueprint for all of the chemical and biological capabilities of that organism. And so this is what we're trying to do at GMGI, is to use a platform of genomics for new discovery. We have two research program areas. One is in biomedicine and biotechnology, and the other is for discoveries related to fisheries. And within those, we have a number of ongoing projects at the moment. So we are looking at the microbial communities in the sea to look for new molecules that could have therapeutic uses, to look for new enzymes that have commercial applications. We're studying marine organisms for their value in terms of biomedical models. I've put my favorite up here. I spent a lot of time investigating sea urchins, which have amazing properties. Some species of sea urchins live only a few years. The red sea urchin can live more than 200 years. It gets through this long life in the absence of any signs of aging, and there are no reported cases of cancer. So by looking at the genomes of these animals, we can begin to understand how they live such long lives, how they can avoid the process of cancer during this, and we hope that this can inform strategies for prevention and treatment of human cancer. On the fishery side of that equation, we've been doing some genomic studies of commercially important species locally, the American lobster and the North Atlantic cod. These then provide a really nice source for developing tools that can be applied to fisheries directly. They can be applied to understanding population structure, migration patterns, susceptibility to disease. So very, very valuable in terms of developing tools that can be used for improving fisheries management. We're also developing new and novel tools using genomic tests, and one of those is using environmental DNA. So when an organism interacts with its environment, it leaves a trace of DNA behind. So we don't actually have to collect organisms from the ocean. We can just collect water from the ocean, sequence the DNA that we extract from the water, and we know what organisms have passed through that water in the last short period of time. So environmental DNA is a new tool to allow us to give estimates of biodiversity and abundance of organisms that are present in the water. And we're also developing tests pardon me, we're developing tests to diagnose disease that affects fisheries, both fisheries and aquaculture. And so the idea here is some of our discoveries will generate intellectual property. Hopefully we will spin off small marine biotech companies from GMGI and create a hub of marine biotechnology centered around Gloucester, being true to the maritime heritage of the region. So why is Gloucester a great place to do this? Well, because I've mentioned a couple of times, we have almost 400 years of maritime history and culture and commerce that have occurred here. A tremendous amount of local knowledge from the fisheries community about the organisms that they collect, but also of the marine environment in general. There are some avid dive groups here and marine biology institutes who add to that by adding a lot of information about what's under the surface of the ocean. We have the biotech community in Boston, just 30 miles away. So that we can really use the community and all of their knowledge to bring some of our discoveries to the marketplace. So leveraging off all of the experience that already exists. At GMGI, we also have a workforce training component. We have the Gloucester Biotechnology Academy. So this is a vocational training program that trains high school graduates to become entry-level lab technicians. So these students now go off to work in wonderful places like the North Shore Innovators, but also in Boston and Cambridge. But eventually, these students will have hopefully jobs in the industry that we create locally as well. So we're training a workforce that have the skills that we need to develop this marine biotechnology hub. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that the very nature of what we do by looking at the genetic information of organisms generates a tremendous amount of data. So we consider ourselves to be a big data entity. And so part of what we're doing here in Gloucester is in order to work with big data, we need to have the infrastructure to do that. And so by creating that infrastructure that allows us to do our job, that provides infrastructure for other entities that require big data. And perhaps they will consider Gloucester as a great place to locate because they can work with big data in Gloucester. And so that's what we're doing. On the very first slide, we had our new research facility. So we are building a lab, a research lab just down the road that's currently under construction. We're really excited about moving into it in the fall and hopefully grow from there.
Thank you so much, Andrea. No, so incredibly exciting industry and some incredibly exciting local applications here right in Gloucester and Cape Ann for it. We'd love to open it up to the floor for you guys. Bear with me one moment. I'm going to try and bring the mic over there so we don't have so much back and forth. But.
So thank you all. It's very, very exciting. I would like to find out what you think is limiting the growth of biotechnology to come over the bridge. Because I still think there is an over-the-bridge phenomenon for those of you. So in Gloucester, we go over the bridge to find things. We need to get people to come up in our direction. So
Let me tell you that Cambridge is a magnet, and it is a very nearly irresistible force field. Getting people to come as far as Beverly from Cambridge, we kid about how you think you have to have a passport to get to Beverly. Getting it that much further, it's the same issue. These days, an awful lot of people don't even have cars. We have a number of people who commute out to our space by taking some sort of commuter rail into North Station, taking the station to Beverly, and walking 3/4 of a mile at least to the front end of Cumming Center, and we're at the back end, so it's another 1/4 of a mile. And that the distance is an issue, but it is people think that they need to be in Kendall Square if they're doing biotech, and it takes a real mindset change to think, I don't really need to pay Kendall Square prices. If I need to go to Kendall Square, it's a half an hour away, I can get there. But it's difficult. That's that great sucking sound is Cambridge. And that's part of the problem. But you come out here and there is absolutely clearly options. I mean, I know of one particular option. Where's Bob O'Brien and Bill Barlash? There's new stuff happening here because it is less expensive, and once you get to a critical mass, the critical mass will attract more. So we now have a critical mass in Beverly, and you've got to get to critical mass out here to do a lot more of it. And I think that's one of the things Andrea's working on.
I'd like to respond to that as well. We saw a very...
You don't have a mic,
I
Dan.
don't have a mic. I'll stand up. We saw a very interesting presentation by the Workforce Investment Group a couple of years ago last year, where they had someone from Metro West who was doing marketing for that particular area. And they did a masterful job. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I think we're missing here, we have everything that is needed to be a cluster because we are a cluster. Gloucester is part of that cluster, but what has not happened we have not created a regional area that has an identifiable reason, an identifiable marketing, let's say, identity. And that's one of the things that I think we can do together.
We're working on that right now, Dave.
Thank you so much, Dave. That's why we're here today.
Yeah, I just would like to add to that. I think I've heard of companies, they're afraid that they can't find the workforce they need up here. But on the flip side, when their employees go out to lunch with someone they don't know, they don't have to be paranoid they're going to get stolen away. I mean, that's the other issue, is there are people in Cambridge that are paranoid they're going to lose scientists to a competing company right there.
They're bringing lunches in to the companies now, so their employees don't go out and mix with the folks now.
Other questions? Tom?
Well, first of all, Andrea, I'd like to thank you for working on the aging process. I very much appreciate it. You can work faster, I appreciate it. One of the things that we've talked about up here at Gloucester, and I appreciate the opinion of the panel, is, for example, somebody graduates from your facility, Marty, and they graduate in a good way. They want to grow, and they're going beyond and making it. So we're trying to establish a place up here where they can come to, and our part of our thinking has been, we have a lot to attract a more permanent company to. We don't compete with the Cambridge, where things are kind of going around in a hectic manner, but we can compete with companies that want to live someplace that's quite beautiful and appropriate. Does that sound like it makes sense?
No question it makes sense. I have high hopes that one of our graduates will be settling in Gloucester here pretty soon. Bill? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a beautiful space. We talk about that all the time. I live in Manchester. I mean, I love it here. I can't, anybody who comes out here and gets a look around, they start realizing what the benefits are. Most of the time, people move out from Boston, Cambridge when their kids are little, and they want to have them in, good schools and a nice suburban environment, and that certainly helps. This place is beautiful.
For some reason, I just thought of it after showing that map that I put up. I think we often try to think we're competing with Cambridge, but we're probably competing with Metro West. I mean, that really is probably our competitor.
And Metro West doesn't have an ocean view.
Yeah. Good time for one or two more questions.
I just wanted to say something about, my name is Clay Kern. Marty had said earlier about one of the things that a lot of people like to not have cars, which is great. It'd be much better if we all had less cars. And Gloucester, I feel like, hasn't really pushed forward on that aspect. Like, the Cummings Center is great because there's so many places, and residential places, where you can live and walk to the Cummings Center, or you can take a train. Whereas here in Gloucester, the Blackburn Industrial Park is one of the great places for lab space and everything else, but there's no pedestrian access. You cannot walk from downtown Gloucester to the Blackburn Circle. It's impossible, unless you want to try across the highway, which we do occasionally. But I think that's like just intelligent design, and planning is one of the huge things that's really holding Gloucester back.
Transportation in general is holding everybody back.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no way to walk from downtown Gloucester to Blackburn Industrial Park, which is where most of the jobs are in this area, for better or for worse. And I don't know why.
Thank you for the comment. We agree. As Mario said, transportation certainly an issue in the area, and something that the cities and government officials are actively working on solving here. I have one question for the panel as we start to close this up. I'd love to ask each of you, what are you most excited about in this space? What's coming, what's right on the horizon that truly drives, that you see something big on the horizon? Andrea?
Again, speaking from from the perspective of GMGI, I think it's really is the combination of bringing biotech and the cutting edge science that's done in biotech and bringing that to the marine environment. I think there's a great scope for new discovery that I think we just have not even seen the likes of what we can find in the marine environment. So again, I think that's a great plus for this environment. You have access to the ocean, you have infrastructure, you have history, you have knowledge. It's a fantastic location for exploring the marine environment.
As a marine biologist originally, I got my degree at the Duke Marine Lab. I certainly echo that. But to me, what is most exciting is the huge changes in the practice of, in what is available for medicine. I mean, antibiotics were indeed a revolution when they came along. I think that cancer will in fact be a curable disease. I think that we will probably figure out prevention for things like Alzheimer's, not a moment too soon. And there's just so much progress in that. Biology is fascinating. And when you discover how much we actually don't know and how much is left to be understood, it's just layers, and I find that excitement. Every new journal comes out and you see something that you didn't have any idea how that worked before. I find that just still exciting.
You didn't leave me much. You hit most of it. I would say, I think I'll echo the preventative medicine angle. So I mentioned before I work in ALS, and there's been something like 100 clinical trials in that space, and they've all failed but two. There's two drugs that are currently FDA approved, and they delay a couple months at most. And so I would say better diagnostics that are earlier. So with ALS, by the time that you know you have it, you're clinical, and often the drugs are too late. So I would say more routine diagnosis, maybe sampling in the home, that kind of thing, that can get potential therapeutics in earlier.
Oh, thank you guys. I very much appreciate the distinguished panel sharing your excitement, sharing your passion for this wonderful industry and the growth that it's bringing into our region up here on Cape Ann. Ken, the people from the chamber, thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure sitting with you, setting this up. I look forward to our future events. June 21st, we'll be talking about coastal resiliency in very much the same format as this. How can we start innovating there, and what new ideas can we come up with to help protect our coastlines from the storms like we've seen this last month? So with that, thank you all. Have a wonderful night.
We've got the space for another 15 minutes. Get another drink, hang out. Don't let the conversation stop here. We'll see you in a couple of months. Thanks again for coming this evening, folks.